Select the car with a mask, then we're going to drop down the highlights and also increase the exposure a little bit. Next we add some dehaze. Then we're going to duplicate and invert the mask that we just created. Drop the exposure just a little bit. For the third mask, we're going to add another radial gradient. We're then going to invert this, and then we're going to subtract a linear gradient from it to get a nice foreground selection. Then we'll drop the exposure down a tiny bit to get the focus onto the car. Next for the wheels, we add 2 radial gradients and increase the exposure so they pop a little bit more. Okay, for the fifth mask, we're going to brush around the shadows and some of the dark points on the image, and then what we're going to do is we're going to select the mask and we're going to invert it with the subject, which is the car in this situation. From there, we can then pull up the shadows and also pull up the exposure. For mask 6, we're going to put a radial gradient over the light in the background and pump the temperature quite a bit. Okay, for mask 7, we're going to add another radial gradient around the light source, and then we're going to add 2 more linear gradients to constrain the light, and then 1 more on the top of the linear gradient just to cut it off a little bit. From there, we're going to pump the temperature and the exposure. For mask 8, we're going to add a radial gradient around the car, and then we're going to subtract the subject from this mask, and then we're going to use another linear gradient to remove the foreground from this, so only the back of the car has the mask on it. And then as with previous, we're going to pump the exposure and the temperature just a little bit to give it a nice warm glow. We're going to add another linear gradient, then subtract a linear gradient from this to create a nice light leak, and then we're going to pump the temperature up a bit. Next, I'm going to open the image in Photoshop, select everything inside of the door, and then use generative fill to fill this in. Then I'm going to remove all of the excess junk that is added. From there, we're going to use a Gaussian blur on the door to add a nice light leak from this. We're going to subtract this Gaussian blur from the car so it only shows up behind the subject. Okay, so this is what we started with, and this is what we've got now. Let me know in the comments if this video helped you at all.